Omega was forced to hold a broken banner until Alpha King asked why its crest reformed near her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. Olivia Martin stood at the front of the crowded hall, her eyes downcast, hands trembling as she clutched the broken banner. The once proud crest that adorned it was now shattered, its edges frayed and torn. She had been forced into this position, chosen, by forces beyond her control. It wasn't a decision she had made, but one thrust upon her by her role in the court. The banner had symbolized a legacy, one of power and glory, but now it was a mere shadow of its former self. She could feel the weight of the expectations bearing down on her. She wasn't meant for this. Olivia was no warrior. She wasn't even a noble by blood. She was just a young woman who had been swept up into the politics of the kingdom, a pawn in a game far bigger than she could ever understand. The Alpha King, Alexander Blackwood, stood at the far end of the hall, his presence commanding the room. His piercing gaze, cold and calculating, swept across the gathering before landing on Olivia. The air seemed to freeze as his eyes fixed on her. "Why is the crest healing?" he asked, his voice low but intense. The words were simple, but they carried an undeniable weight. Olivia looked up, her heart racing in her chest. She didn't know. How could she possibly know? She had been forced to hold the banner, to stand there as a symbol of something she could never fully grasp. And yet, as her fingers tightened around the frayed edges, something was happening. The broken crest, once jagged and ruined, began to glow faintly, its edges starting to realign as if by some invisible force. Olivia's eyes widened in disbelief. How could this be? Was it magic? Was it fate? "I don't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The king's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps, in his eyes. He took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "You're holding more than just a broken banner, Olivia Martin," he said softly, his voice laced with intrigue. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as she met his gaze. There was something in his eyes that made her feel both terrified and drawn to him, like a magnet pulling her in. She couldn't explain it. All she knew was that in that moment, the broken banner in her hands was no longer just an object. It was a link, a connection, to something far more powerful than she could have ever imagined. Olivia stood frozen, her hands still clutching the banner, which now glowed faintly, as if responding to some unseen force. The once broken crest seemed to shift, its jagged edges slowly smoothing out. She could hardly believe her eyes. How was this possible? Was this magic, or something far more profound? Alexander Blackwood's piercing gaze never left her, his expression unreadable but filled with an undeniable curiosity. He took another step closer, his tall figure casting a shadow over her. Yet there was something about his presence that was both comforting and terrifying at the same time. "You didn't answer my question," he said, his voice still soft but filled with an edge that made Olivia's heart race. She opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. How could she explain something she herself didn't understand? "I swear, I'm not doing anything," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't ask for this. I'm not." "It's not your fault," Alexander interrupted gently, his gaze softening, if only for a moment. His eyes were no longer cold, but instead held something that resembled empathy. She couldn't quite place it, but it was enough to make her feel a little less like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. Olivia swallowed hard, still struggling to grasp the situation. "Then why is it happening? Why now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why is the crest healing?" Alexander took another step closer, his towering presence overwhelming her, but strangely, she didn't feel afraid. "That is what we need to find out," he said, his voice thoughtful. "You may not realize it yet, but this banner is more than just a symbol. It's a key to something ancient, something powerful. And you, Olivia Martin, are the one holding it." His words struck her like a thunderbolt, the weight of them sinking in slowly. A key? To what? She had no idea. She was just a young woman from a small town, thrust into a world of courtly politics and magic that she had never asked for. And now she was holding something that could change everything. A key to what? She asked, her voice trembling. Alexander didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped back, his eyes narrowing as he observed her, the glow from the banner flickering in the dim light of the room. It was as if the object was alive, responding to her presence, to her very touch. I believe we're about to find out, he said, his voice filled with a sense of purpose. Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. There was no turning back now. Whatever this was, whatever this banner meant, she was tangled up in it. And Alexander Blackwood, Alpha King, was determined to find out why. We need to go, he said suddenly, made it clear there would be no room for argument. There are things that must be revealed. Things you need to know. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. The vaults? What could be so important hidden away in the depths of the castle? The air around them seemed to grow heavier as they walked, and with each turn, the corridors became more oppressive, the walls narrowing until they reached a great wooden door. Alexander stopped, his hand resting on the handle. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. Are you ready? He asked. Olivia nodded, though she had no idea what she was ready for. Her world had already been turned upside down, and she wasn't sure she could be more shocked than she had already been. But as the door creaked open, revealing the vaults beyond, she realized she was standing on the edge of something far bigger than she had ever imagined. The room was massive, filled with ancient books and scrolls, artifacts of long-forgotten eras, and in the center of it all, a pedestal with an ornate box. The air was thick with dust, but also with a strange, almost electric energy that made Olivia's skin prickle. Alexander moved toward the pedestal, his eyes locked onto the box. This is where it begins, he said softly. Olivia followed him, her curiosity growing with every step. What is that? She asked. That box, Alexander began, pausing just before it, holds the key to understanding the crest and what it means. But more importantly, it holds the answers to why it is responding to you. He turned to face her. You have to open it, Olivia. Only you can. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers tightened around the broken banner as if the object were urging her on. She stepped forward hesitantly, drawn to the box. The weight of the moment was almost too much to bear. This was no ordinary object, and whatever lay inside could change everything. What's inside? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. A secret, Alexander said, his voice low and intense. A secret that has been buried for centuries. Olivia reached for the box, her hands trembling slightly. As her fingers brushed the cool surface, a surge of energy shot through her, and the room seemed to blur for a moment. The banner in her hands flared with light, its glow pulsing. Faster, almost as if it were alive. Her heart raced, and for the briefest moment, she felt connected to something ancient, something vast, and beyond her understanding. She opened the box. Inside, nestled among velvet cloth, was a small, intricately carved stone. The moment she touched it, the energy in the room intensified, and the banner's glow grew even brighter. The stone pulsed in her hand, and suddenly, she understood. This was the key. The crest, the banner, everything. It was all connected to this stone. It was the heart of the magic that had been dormant for centuries. She looked up at Alexander, her eyes wide with realization. This is why it responded to me, she asked, her voice shaking. Alexander nodded, his eyes locked onto the stone in her hand. Yes, he said, his voice filled with both awe and something darker, something that hinted at a deeper knowledge. And now, Olivia, the true journey begins. Olivia held the small, intricately carved stone in her hand, its warmth pulsing through her fingers. The air in the vault was thick with energy, the glow from the banner flickering in sync with the stone. She could feel it, deep in her chest, the connection between them, a pull that seemed to come from some distant, ancient force. Alexander watched her closely, his expression unreadable. You understand now, don't you? He asked quietly, his voice steady. Olivia's eyes widened as she nodded, still processing the overwhelming realization. The banner, the crest, the stone, it was all connected. And somehow, she was at the center of it. I think I do, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This stone, it's the key to everything, isn't it? Yes, Alexander said, his gaze never leaving her. It holds the power to unlock the full potential of the crest. But it's not just about power. This stone is the source of a legacy, one that has been dormant for centuries. He paused, taking a step closer. A legacy that you now carry. Olivia felt a chill run down her spine at his words. The weight of the stone in her hand suddenly felt heavier, as if it were a burden she hadn't fully understood. "What do you mean by legacy?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What am I supposed to do with this?" Alexander's eyes softened for a brief moment, and for the first time, he seemed more human than king. "That," he said, "is the part we're going to figure out together. But first, we need to understand why the stone is responding to you. Why the banner chose you." Olivia looked down at the stone, her thoughts racing. She was just a woman from a small town. She never asked for this, never imagined that she would be involved in something so ancient, so full of magic and mystery. And yet, here she was, standing in a vault filled with relics of the past, holding a stone that could change everything. "How do we figure that out?" she asked, the uncertainty in her voice clear. "We have to go deeper," Alexander said. "There's an ancient temple hidden beneath the castle. It's the place where the stone was originally found, where the banner's true power was first awakened. If we go there, we might find the answers you need." Olivia's heart skipped a beat at the mention of the temple. A hidden place beneath the castle? What could possibly lie there? "How do we get there?" she asked. "We'll go together," Alexander said, his voice firm. "It's not a journey you can make alone." He paused, his gaze softening just slightly. "But I will protect you, Olivia. Whatever happens, I will make sure you're safe." Olivia didn't know whether to be comforted or scared by his words. There was something in his voice, something deep and unspoken, that made her heart race. She could feel the weight of his promise, the responsibility it carried. And for a moment, she wondered if she could trust him. But there was no turning back now. The journey ahead was inevitable, and she had no choice but to move forward. Without another word, she nodded. "Let's go," she said. Alexander gave a slight nod in return, his expression resolute. Together, they left the vault, the stone pulsing in Olivia's hand as they walked toward the unknown. The temple awaited them, and with it, the answers to questions she had never dared to ask. But now, she had no choice but to find out. And as they made their way through the dark corridors of the castle, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. The air in the corridors of the castle grew colder as Olivia and Alexander moved deeper into the ancient structure. Their footsteps echoed through the stone hallways, the weight of the journey ahead settling heavily on Olivia's shoulders. She held the stone tightly in her hand, its pull steady but increasingly intense, as if it were drawing her closer to something she wasn't fully prepared to face. Alexander, always ahead, never faltered. His focus was unwavering, his expression unreadable, but Olivia could feel the tension in his posture. There was something about him that both reassured and unsettled her. The promise he had made, to protect her no matter what, had been comforting, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his words than she could understand. What was he truly protecting her from? And what would they find when they reached the temple? "How far is it?" she asked, her voice breaking the silence between them. "Not much farther," Alexander replied, his voice steady. "But we need to prepare ourselves. The temple is not just a place of answers. It's a place of trials." Trials. The word hung in the air, making Olivia's heart race. She had heard of ancient trials, but never imagined she would be part of one. "What kind of trials?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Alexander turned to face her, his eyes softening for a moment. "The kind that test your will, your strength, and your resolve. The stone you carry," he glanced at it in her hand. "It is the key to passing through. But it is not just about power. It will challenge you in ways you cannot predict." Olivia swallowed hard, her mind reeling. She wasn't sure what was worse, the idea of facing an unknown trial, or the thought that the stone might have a mind of its own. It had already shown signs of responding to her presence, but how far would it take her? And why had it chosen her? "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Olivia confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's gaze softened, and he took a step closer, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You are ready, Olivia," he said, his voice quiet but filled with a quiet intensity. "You've already begun this journey. The stone chose you because you have the strength to face what's ahead. Olivia looked up at him, her heart racing as she searched his eyes. There was so much about him that she didn't understand, so much about this entire situation that was still shrouded in mystery. But in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt before, a spark of determination. She was no longer the frightened woman she had been when she first stepped into the hall with the broken banner. She was something more, something that was beginning to understand the power she now held. "Let's go," she said, her voice firm. Alexander gave her a small nod of approval before turning back to the path ahead. The stone pulsed more strongly in Olivia's hand, almost as if it were guiding her, leading her toward whatever lay ahead. They reached a great set of double doors, ancient carvings covering their surface, the air around them thick with magic. Alexander paused, his hand resting on the door. "This is it," he said quietly. "Once we enter, there's no turning back. Are you ready?" Olivia nodded, her breath shallow but steady. She was ready. She had to be. Together, they pushed open the doors. As they stepped into the temple, the air shifted, and for the first time, Olivia felt the true weight of the journey ahead. This wasn't just about the banner, or the stone, or the power that had been awakened. It was about something far deeper, something that would change the course of her life forever. The temple was unlike anything Olivia had ever seen. The walls were covered in ancient carvings, each one telling stories of a forgotten time, of kings and queens long past, of battles fought and won, and of secrets hidden deep beneath the earth. The air was thick with a strange energy, a hum that vibrated through her very bones. She could feel it, the presence of something old, something powerful. It was as if the temple itself was alive, breathing in sync with her every movement. The stone in her hand pulsed softly, its glow steady but faint, as if acknowledging the place they had entered. Alexander walked beside her, his steps quiet but purposeful, his eyes scanning the darkened space ahead. He seemed at ease in this strange place, as though he had been here before, or perhaps was accustomed to the weight of its power. Olivia, on the other hand, felt small, insignificant in the face of what lay around her. "This is where it all began," Alexander's voice broke the silence, his words quiet but full of reverence. Olivia glanced at him, her heart still racing from the intensity of the moment. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft. Alexander turned to face her, his expression serious. "The stone, the banner, the crest, it all started here. This temple is the birthplace of everything. The powers you now hold are ancient, tied to this place and the magic that flows through it." Olivia's gaze moved from the intricate carvings on the walls to the vast, empty space around them. "But why me?" she asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Why was I chosen?" Alexander's eyes softened, a flicker of understanding passing through them. "You are more than just a woman caught in a web of circumstance, Olivia. You are a part of something much greater. The stone chose you because you have the strength to wield it, to carry the legacy that it represents. It is not by chance that you are here." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Olivia wasn't sure she fully understood what he was saying, but something about it resonated deep within her. She wasn't just a bystander. She was a part of this story, a part of something ancient. "What happens now?" she asked, looking around the temple, as if expecting something to reveal itself. Alexander's gaze turned toward the far end of the temple, where a stone altar stood, bathed in an eerie light. "We must approach the altar," he said. "There, you will find what you need to complete your journey." Olivia felt a wave of unease wash over her. The altar was a place of power, she could feel it. But what would she find there? What would the next step in her journey demand of her? "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice faltering for the first time. "The altar, it feels different." Alexander nodded. "It is different, but it is the only way forward." Together, they walked toward the altar, the stone in Olivia's hand pulsing more brightly with every step. The closer they got, the stronger the energy became, until it felt as though the entire temple was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as they reached the altar. She hesitated for only a moment before placing the stone in the center, the cold surface of the altar sending a shiver up her spine. The moment the stone touched the altar, the entire temple seemed to come alive. The carvings on the walls glowed with a soft light, and the air hummed with a power that made Olivia's skin tingle. She stepped back, her eyes wide with awe and fear. What had she just set into motion? And what was waiting for her now? The moment Olivia placed the stone on the altar, the entire temple seemed to shudder, the walls vibrating with an ancient power. The air thickened, as if the temple itself were awakening from a long slumber. Olivia stepped back, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps, and she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The carvings on the walls began to glow brighter, their images shifting and warping, as if they were alive, telling stories only the stone could understand. The ground beneath her feet hummed with an energy she couldn't quite explain, but it was undeniable. Alexander stood beside her, his eyes fixed on the stone, his expression serious. "This is it," he murmured, almost to himself. "This is what we've been waiting for." Olivia could feel the stone pulling at her, a magnetic force she couldn't resist. It wasn't just in her hand anymore. It was inside of her, resonating with something deep within her soul. Her body thrummed with the power of it, a connection she had never felt before. And then, the light in the temple flared. A pulse of energy surged from the stone, expanding outward and enveloping the room. The air became thick with a shimmering, almost liquid glow, and Olivia felt herself being drawn toward the center of it, as if the stone were calling her. "Olivia," Alexander's voice cut through the chaos, calm and steady. "You mustn't resist. Let it happen." She turned to him, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "What is happening? What does it want from me?" Alexander's gaze softened, and for a moment, she could see the weight of the knowledge he carried, the burden of understanding that she was only beginning to grasp. "It's not what the stone wants, Olivia," he said, his voice low. "It's what you must become. The stone is a catalyst, a trigger, but it is you, your heart, your mind, your will, that will unlock its full power." The words made no sense to Olivia, and yet, somehow, they felt true. She could feel the stone pulling her, pushing her to embrace something unknown. Her entire being screamed in protest, but beneath the fear, there was something else, a quiet whisper of purpose, a sense that this was something she was meant to do. The light intensified, the energy swirling around her in a vortex, and Olivia closed her eyes, allowing herself to be consumed by it. She felt a warmth spread through her, starting from the stone and radiating outward, filling her entire body with a strange, soothing sensation. She could hear whispers, faint voices from a time long past, speaking words she could not understand. But somehow, she knew they were guiding her. The pulse of energy grew stronger, faster, until it was almost overwhelming. And then, as if the stone had finally found its place, everything stopped. The light faded, and the temple fell silent. The air, which had been thick with power, now felt calm, almost peaceful. Olivia opened her eyes and found herself standing in the center of the altar, the stone still glowing softly in her hand. Her breath was steady now, her heart no longer racing, and for the first time since all of this began, she felt a sense of clarity. She looked up at Alexander, who was watching her closely, his expression one of awe. "It's done," she whispered, her voice shaking. Alexander nodded slowly. "Yes, you've awakened it. The power is yours now, Olivia." She glanced down at the stone in her hand, her heart still beating strongly, but with a newfound certainty. She had done it. She had unlocked the power within herself. But as she stood there, a realization began to settle in her chest. This was only the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, whatever trials or challenges awaited her, she knew she was no longer just a girl caught in a world she didn't understand. She was something more, something that had been chosen, something that had been awakened. And with that awakening, the weight of her destiny began to press down on her. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. Olivia stood motionless, the stone in her hand glowing softly as the temple's silence stretched out around them. It was as if the entire place was holding its breath, waiting for something. The energy that had surged moments ago now felt like a distant echo, still humming in the air, but no longer as overwhelming. She took a steadying breath, her fingers tightening around the stone, feeling its warmth seep deeper into her skin. She could still sense the power within it, but now, it was more familiar, more a part of her than before. "It's over," she said quietly, more to herself than to Alexander. He stepped forward, his presence a calm constant in the midst of the chaos that had passed. His gaze was intense as it rested on her, a quiet respect emanating from him. "No, Olivia," he said softly. "It's just beginning." She turned to face him, his words sinking in slowly. He was right. The stone had unlocked something. Yes, but what now? What came next? She was no longer the girl who had stumbled into this journey, uncertain and fearful. Now, she was something else, something greater. The weight of that realization settled over her like a cloak. "What do we do now?" Olivia asked, her voice steady but filled with a question she wasn't sure how to answer. "We move forward," Alexander replied, his voice firm with certainty. "We begin the real journey now." Olivia looked at the stone in her hand, its glow now faint but persistent. The power she had felt earlier had shifted, but she could still feel it, an undercurrent of energy that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. It was as if she and the stone were one, connected in a way she couldn't fully understand. She wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever lay ahead, but one thing was clear, there was no turning back. The path had already been set into motion. "Where do we go from here?" Olivia asked, her voice low, uncertain. Alexander turned his gaze toward the temple's entrance, his expression distant for a moment, as if considering something far beyond the walls of the ancient structure. "There is much to learn," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a history Olivia had only just begun to grasp. "The stone has shown you a glimpse, but there is still more. There are places, forgotten and hidden, where the truth of the banner and the power it holds can be revealed. And I believe that you will be the one to unlock it." Olivia's chest tightened at his words. She was no longer just a participant in this strange journey. She was the key to something greater, something ancient, something that had been waiting for her to discover. She wasn't sure how she felt about that, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had changed, and there was no going back. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice steady now, as if the weight of the stone in her hand had grounded her. "First," Alexander said, "you must learn to control the power within you. The stone is not just a tool, it is a part of you. And once you learn to wield it, you will be able to unlock the doors to the past, to the secrets that have been lost for centuries." He stepped closer to her, his eyes intense. "But it will not be easy. You will face challenges, tests that will push you to your limits. The stone will guide you, but only if you trust it. Only if you trust yourself." Olivia took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what was ahead, but she knew that whatever it was, she was no longer the same person she had been when she first stepped into this temple. She was someone new, someone who could face whatever came next. "I'm ready," she said, her voice stronger now, the resolve in her words matching the strength she felt growing within her. Alexander nodded, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something approving. "Then let's begin," he said quietly. The journey was far from over, but Olivia was ready. And as they turned toward the temple's exit, the world outside waiting for them, she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer afraid. The unknown no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a challenge, and she was ready to face it. As Olivia and Alexander emerged from the temple, the bright sunlight outside seemed to wash over them, starkly contrasting the heavy, otherworldly atmosphere of the sacred space they had just left. The air was cooler now, a soft breeze rustling the leaves of the trees surrounding the temple's entrance. It felt as though the world outside had moved on, while everything inside the temple had stood still, frozen in time. But for Olivia, everything had changed. She was no longer the same person who had walked through the temple's grand doors. The power she had unlocked, the stone that had chosen her, it all felt so much more real now, as if it was woven into the very fabric of her being. Alexander walked beside her, his presence steady and constant, like a guardian. She could feel his gaze on her, not with judgment, but with an understanding that she hadn't fully come to terms with herself. He had known all along what she was capable of, even when she had no idea. "What happens now?" Olivia asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was still steady, but there was a curiosity in it now, a hunger for answers that had grown within her. Alexander's response came slowly, carefully. "Now, we move toward the next stage. We need to find the hidden places, the ones where the rest of the answers lie." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. The weight of those words settled on her, the reality of what was ahead becoming clearer. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but it wasn't this, a lifetime of searching for answers, for a purpose she hadn't even understood until now. "Where do we even begin?" she asked, uncertainty creeping into her tone. Alexander glanced at her, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if weighing his words. "There are places scattered across the kingdom, ancient sites where the magic of the stone first began. Only by finding those places will you fully understand the power you hold, and what it truly means." Olivia felt the stone pulsing in her hand, the connection between them growing stronger. It was as though the stone was listening to their conversation, reacting to it. She wondered, for the first time, how much control she truly had over it. Was it a tool, a weapon, or something more? "How do you know all of this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander stopped walking for a moment, turning to face her. His gaze softened, and for the first time, Olivia saw a flicker of something personal in his eyes. "I've seen it before," he said quietly. "I've seen what happens when the stone chooses someone, when they awaken its power. But even then, I didn't understand it fully. Not until now." Olivia's curiosity deepened, but she didn't press him further. There was still so much she didn't know, so much that was hidden from her. But now, she felt a new sense of determination. She wasn't going to remain in the dark forever. Whatever secrets this stone held, she was going to uncover them, even if it meant searching for years. "Then let's start," she said firmly, more to herself than to him. She didn't know what the future held, or what challenges lay ahead, but she was ready. Whatever trials awaited her, whatever tests she would have to face, she would face them head-on. Alexander nodded, a small, approving smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yes," he said. "Let's start." Together, they turned and walked toward the horizon, the path before them still uncertain. But for the first time, Olivia felt that the unknown was no longer something to fear. It was something to embrace. The journey had only just begun,